Hello and welcome to Food for You and the Planet, a fresh new podcast that explores healthy and environmentally sustainable food solutions. This podcast is brought to you by Healthy Planet Online Farmers Market. I'm Dr. Rosemary Ostfeld and I'm your host. Together, we'll hear from leaders in environmental science, agriculture, medicine, nutrition, entrepreneurship, and more. Today's episode features Kourtney Houk, Food Business Manager at Compassion in World Farming. Kourtney serves as a food business manager with the U.S. team, working closely with major U.S. food businesses to adopt and build upon commitments for animal welfare. She is passionate about transforming food systems and is excited to partner with companies to drive systemic change toward regenerative agriculture and more sustainable farming practices. Kourtney holds a master's in higher education administration and a bachelor's in hospitality business from Central Michigan University. She lives in northern Michigan and enjoys spending time on growing homestead gardening, baking, and raising chickens. Thanks for being here today, Kourtney.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, what is Compassion in World Farming and what type of work do you do?
So, Compassion in World Farming as an organization is on a mission to end factory farming and really just to shift towards a more regenerative food system. And we do that through a lot of advocacy work and partnering with food companies to advance both animal welfare and sustainable agriculture using scientific research to do so. So, we were founded in 1967 by a dairy farmer and are headquartered in the UK, but now have expanded and have regional offices across the globe with over 1 million supporters worldwide. So the work that we do really is partnering with food companies on animal welfare, sustainable sourcing, and regenerative agriculture.
So, what are some of the key animal welfare issues that exist with industrial scale agriculture, specifically with confined animal feeding operations or CAFOs?
Yeah. Really, the main ones we focus on are close confinement in the intensive system, and just kind of lack of environmental enrichments and the inability for animals to express their natural behavior. Those are kind of the core animal welfare issues that we focus on, but there's so many more. Routine use of antibiotics, genetic engineering, growth promoting substances, um, lots of slaughter issues as well that we work on.
So what are some of the animal welfare issues Compassion in World Farming has worked on and some of the positive changes it's helped create? I know that your organization has existed for a really long time. So what are some of the positive impacts?
Yeah, so many. We've had a large impact, and I think globally we've seen a lot of transformation in our food system across really all species. In the US office, we work primarily on laying hen welfare, pig welfare, and then broiler chickens, which is meat chicken welfare. Um, Really to just kind of advance the welfare practices that companies adopt and that states or countries adopt in their legislation. And we've seen a lot of impact through that work. There's lots more to go, but there's a lot of momentum around shifting towards more cage-free models. Laying hens, as an example, we've helped shift in the US towards a cage-free market. Now the cage-free market, I think, is around 40% of hens or eggs that come from hens not confined in cages. So we've seen a big shift in that over the past decade. We've also done a lot of work to help companies advance broiler chicken welfare through the Better Chicken Commitment. So that's in the United States. Over 230 companies have signed on to the Better Chicken Commitment. Globally, the European Chicken Commitment has had a lot of momentum behind that as well. But in our US office, we co-facilitate a working group for broiler welfare with top US companies and help them kind of roadmap to meet the commitments that they've set. and then just kind of help them along their journey to, face those obstacles and overcome any hurdles that they're facing just in transforming their supply chain. And then additionally with pig welfare, and we work a lot with sow welfare. So to move away from the use of gestation crates, which there's a lot of momentum right now. Our food business and campaigns team have seen big shifts, especially with Prop 12 in California and some recent legislation for animal welfare, shifting towards more crate-free models. So those have been some really big wins that we've been able to celebrate.
That's really great. So looking at like the end of an animal's life, what are some of the most humane ways to slaughter animals?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the model that you're looking at. In an intensive kind of modern industrial system, where the slaughter facility is really big, we really just advocate for the death to be as instantaneous as possible. And if that's not possible, for some kind of pre-slaughter stunning. So for our broiler chickens, what we're advocating for in the Better Chicken Commitment is a controlled atmosphere stunning model that keeps the chickens in a calmer environment so they're not shackled and going through the water bath, electrical stunning, which is better for workers in this controlled atmosphere stunning model and better for chickens as well. So that uses gases to kind of apply a pre-stunning prior to slaughter. In a non kind of modern industrial system, more smaller scale on farm slaughter really is the best option for both, I think, the caretakers and the animals, and just minimizing the transport that animals need to get to the slaughter facilities.
So what role can different animal welfare certifications play in helping people choose meat that's been raised in an ethical way? Like what should people look for if they are trying to choose something that's had, yeah, more compassionate life?
Yeah, there are some really meaningful animal welfare standards out there that I think are valuable both for companies to use in their supply chains and for consumers as well. So for a consumer walking into a retailer to know kind of where their food comes from, I think is really valuable. And certifications can actually do that. So beyond just looking up, the farm or company that produced the product, meaningful certifications like GAP, Global Animal Partnership, or Certified Humane or Animal Welfare Approved. Those are some of the top ones that we advocate for. There's also some regenerative certifications. Regenerative organic certified, or even just the certified organic standard, is now implementing animal welfare across their standards. So those I think would be the top one amongst just, going into a store and not knowing where your food comes from. We do at Compassion World Farming has a compassionate food guide on our website. And I think that's a really helpful resource for consumers. It goes species by species just to kind of understand what is a meaningful certification and what standards are actually covered under that certification. So I'd encourage your listeners to check that one out. But besides that, I think as local as you can buy, I would always advocate for that being a really good option too, just to know exactly where the food is coming from.
That's really helpful. Yeah, that guide sounds really great. If someone were to purchase food from a small local farm and maybe they didn't have those certifications yet, what are some of the practices they could ask the farmer about or things that they could try to look for to understand more about how the animals are raised and slaughtered?
Yeah, not all certifications are accessible for all farmers. So I think really just knowing your farmer, especially if you're buying local at a farmer's market or a local CSA. I think, farmers really care about their animals and their land. So it might even be inviting you over to their farm to see how the animals are raised. But I think just looking at kind of the obvious things, if the animal has access to the outdoors, what kind of food they're eating, if they have clean water to drink, those basic things. And I think in general, just seeing if an animal seems happy, if they have a lot of space, and if they're expressing their natural behaviors. If a cow is running in a field, or if a pig has a curly tail, or chickens flapping their wings around, those are all really good signs that I think help the consumer find trust in where their food's coming from.
So how can livestock practices such as raising animals on pasture improve animal welfare?
Yeah, pasture raised is a really good option for animal welfare. Really just providing animals access to the outdoors and the sunshine. I mean, it's good for people and good for animals, and just allows them room to roam, not being confined to a cage or a barn. Um, Pasture raised, I think, also adds value in what the animal is eating. So if they're eating grass and kind of regenerating the soil as well, um, that's great for animal welfare as well as the planet. Um, so yeah, I think pasture raised is a really good option overall, just making sure that the animal has proper shade coverage if they are outside is really important for animal welfare, just somewhere to kind of escape to.
Yeah, that's probably something that most people might forget about. So that's
Yeah,
important. Remember that.
right. Yeah, you want the animals to be in the sun, but also shade. So it's a balance. But yeah, pasture raised typically is the best model for animal welfare.
Great. What are some of the animal welfare issues that are most difficult to address, and how could people campaign to address those?
Yeah, that's a good question. Animal welfare really is complex sometimes, and also sometimes really simple. A lot of what our organization fights for is just the close confinement issues that we see so often in an industrial kind of factory farming system model. And I think that's what takes most advocating for amongst consumers and just people who are passionate about animal welfare. It's not often covered in legislation, certainly on the federal level, but even on state level, legislation is really just kind of limited to protect animal welfare. So I think part of understanding the nuances are um, just kind of paying attention to what's going on and where food is coming from as a really basic first step. Um, and voting with your dollar. On our food business team, working with companies, I think the biggest thing we can see is when consumers are demanding higher welfare products, the companies are more likely to also demand those from the producers. And that kind of shifts the model and transforms it at a larger scale. So voting with your dollar if you're in kind of those larger corporations, or just shopping local, and knowing your farmer and where your food comes from. On a level, a different kind of pathway outside of the food business work is our campaigns work that we do. Compassion World Farming does a lot of campaigning. So we would love more support from folks interested and passionate about animal welfare to help with some of those campaigns. Um, some of that's like sending emails to legislators or even just signing petitions, those types of kind of basic advocacy tools, and following us on social media, sharing those types of things that we do. But overall, I just think paying attention to animal welfare and kind of how animals are raised, and acknowledging that animals are sentient beings and that they have emotions and feelings, um, and talking with other people to educate in general consumers about that really goes a long way.
Are there any campaigns that you're working on right now, or things that might interest some listeners?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work over the past year or so, a little bit less since Prop 12 has been upheld by the Supreme Court to get that come to fruition. So Prop 12 changes the kind of limited requirements of space for pigs, so mother sows, hens, and then veal crates. So paying attention to the Prop 12, a lot of that has received some industry pushback. So we're doing a lot of campaigns around the EATS Act currently, which restricts some of that. So supporters could join us in that campaign. And then just general different states are currently either passing or looking at passing legislation around hens, cage-free hens, and kind of the cage requirements state to state. So there's a lot of momentum around that. So we'd love additional support for those. Those are the few that come to mind. But if listeners wanted to follow us on social media, we always post there, or you can sign up to our emails too.
Awesome. Are there any other things that you'd like to add or share about your work? Maybe like specific projects or things you're excited about right now?
Yeah, I can share kind of a few big wins that we had this year.
Awesome.
One that we don't get to talk about so often, but we actually had a win for octopus welfare, which is total kind of different than the farm animal perspective. But our campaigns team and supporters this year helped shut down a research facility in Hawaii that was going to transition to an octopus farm. Um, and that received a lot of attention of kind of people don't think about octopus farming as a common issue. So
Yeah.
that was a big win for us, just to get traction on a different, animal and how we can protect those animals. Aside from that, this year we just posted or published our egg track report. So we run an egg track and a chicken track report, and that's kind of a compliance tool for companies and consumers to see the momentum behind animal welfare in the industry. So our recent egg track report was just launched actually last week, and that is really exciting to see the transition that a lot of companies are making towards cage-free eggs. And that's where I got that 40% statistic. So um, that's really exciting to see. Chicken track will be posted at the end of March this year. So there's been a lot of momentum around higher welfare chicken this year, and we've helped a lot of companies who have made commitments previously actually roadmap to set goals of how they're going to reach those targets. So that's been really exciting from my work in particular. So you can check that out online as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for joining today, Kourtney. It's awesome to hear about all of the really important work that Compassion in World Farming is doing and the work that you're doing to work with businesses. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.